Poor girl applied to be a maid, but the billionaire CEO's mother froze when she saw her face. She didn't flinch when I rolled her wheelchair into the... But the second my hand touched hers, she froze. Not like she was startled. Like something inside her remembered. I came here to scrub floors, to wash linens and wipe down mahogany that smelled like old money and older ghosts. I didn't come looking for history. I didn't come looking for family. But in the silence between her sharp words and my steady breath, something shifted. Her eyes stayed on mine longer than they should have. And somewhere in that stillness, I felt it too. Like I'd finally come home to a place I'd never been. And she? She was starting to remember the granddaughter she thought she lost. The granddaughter she never knew. Stanina held its breath in the early spring. Spanish moss draped like memory from the live oaks, and the heavy gates of the Whitmore estate creaked open. Lily Rowe didn't look like much when she arrived. Scuffed shoes, clean hands, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder like she'd learned to pack light, not by choice but by survival. She had only one reference, no resume, but she had steady hands, a quiet voice, and eyes that looked people straight on, something you couldn't fake, not even in a borrowed blouse. The job listing had been brief. Live-in caretaker, room provided, references preferred, patience required. No last name on the ad. But everyone in Savannah knew what the Whitmore house meant. And no one applied twice. The front steps of the estate rose like a warning. She climbed them slowly, heart quiet but not calm. The butler barely made eye contact as he led her through grand hallways she couldn't imagine ever feeling at home in. "Ms. Whitmore is expecting you," he said without warmth. She nodded, unsure if he was lying. They led her into a sunroom thick with light and silence. And there, in a carved mahogany wheelchair, with a shawl draped over her thin shoulders and a fire in her steel-gray eyes, sat Eleanor Whitmore. She was smaller than Lily expected, fragile-looking, but nothing about her felt weak. "Another one?" Eleanor muttered, not to her but to the air. "I've already dismissed 4 this month." Lily didn't speak. Eleanor turned slowly, her gaze catching on Lily's face, and not letting go. It lasted too long to be polite. Too long to be nothing. "Name?" Eleanor asked finally. He rose. Flicker, barely visible, but it passed through Eleanor's expression like a shadow across water. "Where are you from?" "Here you'd remember," Lily said. Eleanor didn't smile, but something in her eyes shifted, just a little. "Education, an assistant program. Finished it last spring." "Why are you applying to be a maid?" "Because I need the money, and because my foster mother can't work anymore." Another pause. "Are you always that honest?" "Did Mom?" Eleanor blinked. "Roll me into the light." Lily stepped behind the chair, gently placing her hands on the wooden grips. The wheels creaked softly as she guided them closer to the large window. When her fingers brushed Eleanor's wrist, only for a second the older woman tensed. Like she'd been touched by someone long buried. Her lips parted, her breath caught. But then it passed. And the moment was gone. Eleanor's voice was distant now. "Do you know how many women have touched that chair and thought they'd be the one to stay?" "No, Mom." Eleanor's gaze cut through her. "Neither do I, because I never let myself remember." She looked back out the window. "You may stay. 3 days. That's all?" The estate was a world of rules. Clothes changed at the door, phones left downstairs, meals at precisely 8, 12, and 6. No lingering, no curiosity, no history asked or shared. But Lily watched. The way Eleanor ran her fingers along the spines of old books. The way she lingered too long on photos in the hallway she claimed not to care about. The woman was lonely, but wouldn't name it. And the house was full of echoes, but no one listened. On her second night, Lily heard Eleanor coughing through the walls. He entered the bedroom without knocking. "Your lungs are rattling," Lily said gently. "I can make you a poultice." Eleanor glared. "I didn't ask for help." "No, ma'am," Lily replied, "but you sound like someone who used to sing." Eleanor stared at her, fury and grief warring in her expression. "I haven't sung in 30 years. Lily nodded. "Maybe it's time to remember the tune." She turned to leave, but before she could step out, Eleanor whispered, "Caroline used to say that." Lily paused. "Your daughter?" she asked carefully. "It's gone." Lily nodded. "I'm sorry." Eleanor didn't answer. That night, Lily lay awake in the attic room with the cracked ceiling and the scent of lavender soap clinging to the sheets. She looked at the moonlight cutting through the shutters and wondered how a girl like her had ended up in a place like this. Then again, something about the air felt oddly familiar, like a memory not quite hers. And in the room below, Eleanor sat in silence, staring at an old photograph tucked in her lap. A photo of a baby girl with eyes too clear and wide for her own good. A baby she'd only held once. A baby she lost before she even got the chance to know her name. But now, the girl upstairs had that same stubborn tilt of the chin, that same quiet voice, that same way of touching someone's wrist, like she meant to heal something deeper than blood pressure. Lily Rowe, Eleanor whispered to herself in the dark. Or could it be? Chapter 1. The Girl at the Gate. The Whitmore estate sat on the edge of Savannah, like an old story nobody dared finish. All white columns, wrought iron, and windows that watched more than they welcomed. Lily Rowe stood just outside the front gate, a single canvas bag slung over her shoulder and a thrifted dress brushing her ankles. Her shoes were scuffed, her palms were steady. She didn't know what waited on the other side of the iron gate, but she knew what she was walking away from. A one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, a broken radiator, and a foster mother lying in bed with more bills than pills. She buzzed the intercom. The voice that answered was clipped and old money Southern. "Name? Lily Rowe. Here for the housekeeper position." Island crackled. Then the lock clicked. The butler, a man with slicked back, gray hair, and a posture that hadn't bent in 50 years, met her on the front steps. He said nothing at first, only gave her a tight nod and a longer glance. "This way," he said eventually. "Miss Whitmore is expecting you. She's particular." Lily followed, counting her breath. 1 in, 2 out. Just like she taught herself during exam week, or when the lights were cut and she didn't want to cry loud enough to wake her foster mother. The house was everything she expected and more. White marble floors, antique chandeliers, floral wallpaper that had aged without apology. Each hallway smelled like a decade gone by. They passed a grand piano in the foyer, untouched but dustless. A library door cracked just wide enough for her to see the spines of first editions. A hallway of portraits, none with smiles. Then came the sunroom. Wide windows, a fireplace that hadn't been lit since fall, and in the center of the light, a carved oak wheelchair facing the window. Eleanor Whitmore didn't turn when they entered. She simply said, "Let her come forward. Alone." The butler gave Lily a look unreadable but not unkind, then stepped out. Lily walked carefully, shoes quiet on the wood floor. Eleanor's voice came sharp, clear. "What's your name?" "Lily Rowe's mom." Still no turn. "Age?" 25. "Experience?" 3 years caregiving. Before that, waitressing and a nursing assistant certificate. That made the woman pause. "Technical background," Eleanor murmured. "That explains the confidence." Lily said nothing. "Apply here." Lily kept her voice steady. "Because I heard it paid well, and I have someone depending on me." Eleanor turned then, slowly, like a tide turning back from shore. Her face was regal, proud, high cheekbones, sharp eyes, southern steel. But when her gaze landed on Lily, really landed, her breath caught. It was so subtle that most people wouldn't have noticed. But Lily did. Because for a second, just a second, Eleanor looked like someone had walked out of her memory and into the room. Eleanor said nothing for a long while. Then she gestured almost impatiently. Bring the chair closer to the window." Lily obeyed, moving behind the wooden grips. When her fingers touched Eleanor's wrist to steady her for the roll forward, the woman flinched barely and then went still. Lily glanced down. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you." Eleanor didn't speak. Her eyes were locked on Lily's hands. 3 days, she said finally. "That's all I offer, a trial. Everyone gets one." "Ma'am," Lily replied softly. "I don't call me ma'am," Eleanor added. "Makes me feel like a museum exhibit." "Miss Whitmore will do." Lily gave a nod. "Yes, Miss Whitmore." The older woman turned back to the window. "Let's settle in. Upstairs. The attic room. You'll share a bath with no one. I prefer my staff unseen." The dismissal was clear. Lily bowed her head slightly, a habit from working around women with tempers, and walked out. But just before the door closed behind her, she heard Eleanor whisper something. So faint it barely reached her. "Lily?" It wasn't a question. It sounded like a name she hadn't spoken in decades. Upstairs, the attic room was small but clean. A narrow bed, a worn writing desk, a square window that looked out over magnolia trees. Lily dropped her bag and stood still. Her chest hurt in a way she hadn't expected. Not fear, not nerves. Something else. Something like being remembered by a place you didn't know you were missing. She pulled out the old photograph she always carried. Her foster mother had given it to her on her 18th birthday. A baby girl wrapped in a pale blanket. No name on the back, just a date. Lily had stared at it for years, hoping the photo would give something away. Now she wondered, could she have come home without knowing it? Downstairs, Eleanor sat in the same position, eyes on the window but not seeing it. She was seeing a hospital room. A young woman, Caroline, pale and crying, holding a baby she named just once before she disappeared into the system. "Lily," she had said. "Her name is Lily." Eleanor had searched. God, how she'd searched. But the baby had vanished, adoption paperwork sealed, foster records lost. Until today. Until a girl stood in her doorway, and for a breath, Eleanor had remembered what it felt like to hope. Chapter 2. A job below her bloodline. The second morning started with peaches. Fresh, sliced, and arranged in a delicate fan on a porcelain plate. Lily placed them on the tray with care, just beside the silver spoon and folded linen napkin, the way the butler instructed. Her hands moved with quiet certainty. She had served meals before, cleaned houses, bathed strangers, watched as people spoke around her, not to her. But this felt different. Not harder, just heavier. As if every step she took down the long Whitmore hallway stirred something that had long settled into dust. Eleanor Whitmore didn't look up when Lily entered her room. She was seated by the window again, shawl draped over her lap, reading an old hardback with a cracked spine. Lily set the tray down gently. "The peaches are from the garden," she said, still firm, just ripe enough. Eleanor turned a single page. "I wasn't aware you had culinary opinions," she said dryly. "I grew up with canned fruit," Lily replied. "When you taste something fresh, it tells you a story." That made Eleanor glance up. Her eyes lingered, not on the peaches, but on Lily. "You speak as if you've been taught to listen." "I've been taught to survive." The silence that followed was not unkind. "Sit," Eleanor said suddenly, gesturing toward the empty armchair across from her. Lily blinked. "Ma'am?" "I said sit. You think I invited you into this house to walk behind me like a ghost? I want to see what I'm feeding." Lily sat, slowly, carefully, like she didn't fully trust the invitation. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. "What's your real story?" Lily didn't answer. So Eleanor continued. "You walk like someone who's had to leave quickly. You speak like someone who's read more than she was given. And you carry yourself like someone who doesn't belong in a servant's apron." Lily's jaw tightened. "I belong where I'm needed." Eleanor cocked her head. That's a beautiful deflection. It's the truth. Eleanor leaned back, eyes narrowing just slightly. My daughter Caroline once said that to me, right before she walked out the door with a newborn in her arms. Lily's breath caught. But she didn't move. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Did you know her? No, Lily said quickly, too quickly. No, I didn't. Eleanor didn't press, but her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the spoon. Later that afternoon, Lily stepped into the family library. It smelled of leather, oak, and ghosts. Light poured through the tall, arched windows, landing on thick carpets and shelves full of books too old to be touched without reverence. She didn't mean to intrude. She only wanted to see the place she'd passed so many times. She ran her fingers along the spines. Dust rose in delicate clouds, and then her hand paused. A worn green volume titled Modern Physiology. She pulled it off the shelf and opened it. Inside the cover, a name scrawled in faded ink. Caroline Whitmore, Johns Hopkins University. Her mother. Or at least, the woman the stories whispered might have been. Her fingers shook as she closed the book. When she turned around, Eleanor was standing in the doorway. Did you know to look there? I didn't, Lily said. It found me. That night, Lily stood in her small attic room, the book clutched to her chest. She opened her journal and scribbled a single line. She remembers something. I can feel it, even if she won't say it out loud. Outside, the storm rolled in. Savannah rains never whispered. They arrived like truth. Downstairs, Eleanor sat in her sunroom, holding a photo she never let anyone else see. A baby girl with wide eyes. The only photograph Caroline had sent, postmarked from somewhere in North Carolina, months before she vanished for. The baby in the picture had Lily's eyes. Eleanor clutched it tight, her lips trembling. She looks like her, she whispered to no one. But she feels like her. The next morning, Lily brought her a fresh cup of jasmine. Eleanor took it without a word, and after a long pause said quietly, I would have known the second you touched my hand. Lily looked up, startled. Their eyes met, 2 generations separated by pain and silence. I'm not yours, Lily said softly, but her voice cracked when she said it. And Eleanor didn't believe her. Chapter 3. The Books She Left Behind. The rain didn't let up for 2 days. It came in steady sheets, drumming against the glass panes of the Whitmore estate, like the sound of someone knocking gently, persistently, on the edge of memory. Lily moved through the house quietly, the way she'd always done. Barefoot in the mornings, hair pinned back, hands busy with towels and dishes and trays. But lately she felt it more clearly, the way the house seemed to notice her now. Or perhaps it was Eleanor who noticed. The older woman didn't ask questions outright. She asked around them, about Lily's foster mother, about the town she grew up in, about the schools that weren't on her resume. Each answer Lily gave was careful but not cold. She wasn't hiding, not exactly, but there were truths she didn't have enough room in her hands to hold yet. On the 3rd morning of the storm, Eleanor called for tea in the library. Lily had only been in the room twice, both times fleeting. This time she entered with a tray of chamomile and honey and found the older woman seated, not in her usual chair, but on the floor, surrounded by open boxes. Eleanor didn't look up as Lily entered. Sit, she said. Lily hesitated. You're not supposed to be on the floor. I'm not supposed to be a lot of things, Eleanor replied, flipping through a stack of papers. Lily set the tray down and sank cross-legged onto the carpet. The storm outside made everything feel cocooned. This library was my husband's, Eleanor said. God rest his impatient soul. He didn't read a damn thing unless it was about stocks or boats. Lily smiled faintly. Sounds like half the men I waited on at the diner. Eleanor snorted softly, the closest she came to laughter. These books, she continued, gesturing at the piles, are mine, or were. I boxed them up when Caroline left. Couldn't stand to see her handwriting on the margins. Lily froze. You boxed them after she left? Eleanor nodded. She was always scribbling in the margins. Notes, argued. She reached for a thin, water-stained paperback. Here, she said. You read, I'm tired. Lily took the book. A Room of One's Own, Virginia Woolf. She opened it at random, and there it was. Faded pencil lines under a sentence, slanted cursive in the margin. She never needed permission. She needed space. The sun. Lily traced the initials with her thumb. I've read this before, she said quietly. Eleanor looked over. You've read Woolf? Once, Lily replied. In high school, my English teacher lent it to me, said it reminded her of someone she used to know. Eleanor's breath caught, so subtly Lily almost missed it. The teacher's name? She asked. Lily looked up. I never knew her real name. She left mid-year. I was 14. But she gave me this book before she went. Eleanor reached over and took the book from Lily's lap. She stared at the inscription for a long time. You don't think that's strange? She asked. Lily shrugged, but something in her chest tightened. I always thought she was running from something. Eleanor closed the book gently. He was. From me. That night, Lily sat on the floor of her attic room, surrounded by books. The library had released them like ghosts. She ran her fingers over pages written in a hand that matched a faded note she kept in her bag. A note she'd never shown anyone. It was torn from a notebook, just a single line. Her name is Lily. Please tell her I'm sorry. She'd found it tucked in her baby blanket when she turned 16. Her foster mother had said it came from before, but had no idea who wrote it. Lily had never been sure if it was even real. But now she wasn't so sure it wasn't from Caroline Whitmore. Downstairs, Eleanor was sleepless. The thunder made her bones ache. She stared at the portrait above the fireplace, a younger version of herself, stern-eyed and regal beside her husband, both hands on the shoulders of a teenage Caroline. She had always hated that photo, because it caught the exact moment Caroline was slipping away, already looking off to the side, as if she could see the door that would carry her out of this house forever. Now Eleanor saw that same look in Lily. But this time, it terrified her. Because if she was right, if Lily was really hers, then fate had brought her back once, and could just as easily take her away again. The next morning, Lily woke early and walked the garden in silence. The storm had passed. The earth was damp, the sky was clearing, and in the far corner of the yard, beneath a dogwood tree, she found a small iron bench and a rusted sundial. She sat. From her pocket, she pulled the note again, read it, reread it. Then she whispered, "Did you leave me, or were you taken from me?" The wind answered only in birdsong. But behind her, the library window opened, and Eleanor Whitmore stood there in silence, watching the granddaughter she had never been brave enough to go looking for. Chapter 4. The day she helped her stand. It happened on a Tuesday. There was no thunder, no dramatic music in the background, just the hum of sunlight on polished floors and the distant sound of wind brushing through the magnolia trees. Lily had been cleaning the sunroom, the windows stretched floor to ceiling, catching the light in such a way that even the dust seemed delicate. Eleanor Whitmore was unusually silent that morning. She sat in her wheelchair, wrapped in a soft blue cardigan, her gaze fixed on something that wasn't there, or maybe something only she could still see. "Miss Whitmore," Lily said gently, "would you like to try your standing exercises today?" Eleanor didn't answer. Lily set down her cloth and crossed the room, kneeling beside the chair, her voice soft. "Your doctor left those resistance bands in the hallway. We could try just 5 minutes." Eleanor looked at her then, not with irritation, but with something much harder to name. Her eyes were glassy, the storm behind them quiet. "Do you know how many women I've hired over the years? she said suddenly. Lily stayed quiet. We all wanted to fix me, stand me up, make me whole. She glanced away. But they didn't see me. I'm not trying to fix you, Lily whispered. Then why do you keep showing up? Lily didn't answer. Instead, she reached out, gently, and placed her hand over Eleanor's. I show up because you're still here. The silence stretched. Then Eleanor whispered, Fine, 5 minutes. Lily nodded, her voice steady even as her heart began to race. They had done small movements before, ankle rolls, hand grips, balance shifts, but never this, never standing. She moved with care, adjusting the footrests, checking the braces, making sure the handles were firm. Then she reached out, and together they counted. 2, 3. And Eleanor pulled. Her arms trembled, her jaw clenched, but Lily braced her, steadied her, whispered just loud enough for Eleanor to hear. You're not alone. And then, she stood. Not fully, not long, not without pain. But enough. Enough that her weight met her legs. Enough that her shoulders shook. Enough that something unspoken passed between them like light between two mirrors. Then her knees buckled and Lily caught her. But it didn't matter, because Eleanor Whitmore had stood. They didn't speak of it after. Lily helped her back into the chair, tucked the blanket over her legs, and said nothing. Eleanor looked at the window again. But her eyes were different now, like someone had opened a door she didn't know had been locked. That night, Lily sat in the attic room, still breathing like she had run a race. Not from the effort, from the moment. It had changed something. She pulled out the note again, the one she never let go of, and stared at the handwriting. But could Eleanor have known? Could she have been part of the reason her mother disappeared? And if so, why did her hands still feel so warm? The next morning, Eleanor was waiting for her. I want to try again, she said without preamble. Lily blinked. The standing of the truth. She turned slightly. Sit, he said. Lily obeyed. Eleanor took a breath, slow and deliberate. Caroline left. She was pregnant. Barely. She wouldn't tell me the father's name. Wouldn't tell me where she was going. And she paused. 3 years later, I got a letter. No return address. Just a photograph of a baby. And a name. Lily. Lily's breath caught. Eleanor didn't look at her. I tried to track her down. I paid investigators. But by then, the trail was gone. The baby, you, had already been placed in the system. The record sealed, the note I sent, I don't know if it ever reached you. Lily slowly pulled the crumpled paper from her pocket and placed it in Eleanor's lap. Eleanor stared. Her name is Lily. Please tell her I'm sorry. She touched the edge of it like it might dissolve. I've carried this since I was 16, Lily whispered. I never knew if it meant anything. Eleanor looked up. Her eyes were full. It means everything. They didn't cry. Not then. But in the quiet that followed, Eleanor reached out and took Lily's hand. And for the first time in decades, she didn't feel like a ghost inside her own house. And she felt seen, held down. That evening, Lily wheeled her outside for the first time. They sat beneath the dogwood tree in the garden, the petals falling like confetti over Eleanor's lap. I can't give you back what was stolen, Eleanor said quietly. I don't want it back, Lily replied. I want what's here. Eleanor's fingers curled gently around hers. What's here is yours, Lily, not because of blood, but because of who you are. And Lily knew in that moment that she wasn't just a housekeeper. She wasn't a burden, or a mistake. She was a granddaughter. Finally, undeniably. Chapter 5. The Woman Who Vanished. Marion Whitmore was not a woman accustomed to being surprised. She kept her calendar in pen, her shoes lined by color and her emotions locked so tight she could walk through death and never let it wrinkle her blouse. So when she walked into the sunroom that morning and saw her mother standing with Lily holding her arm, Marian dropped her phone. Eleanor sat back down immediately, breath shallow, lips drawn in calm satisfaction. "Good morning, Marian," she said, as if nothing monumental had just occurred. Olivia stepped back instinctively. Marian recovered quickly, straightening her collar. "You're not cleared for weight-bearing activity," she said sharply. "And I'm not cleared for a lot of things, Eleanor." Marian turned to Lily. "You were hired to clean and prepare meals, not play physical therapist." Eleanor cut in before Lily could answer. "She didn't make me stand, Marian. I asked her." There was a pause, small but loaded. Then Eleanor said coolly, "In fact, Lily has done more for this house in 3 weeks than you've managed in 30 years. Lily took a step back. "I should go check the sheets." "No," Eleanor said, her voice sharp. Instead, Marian folded her arms. "I don't know what's gotten into you, Mother, but we need to talk, alone." Eleanor gestured toward the chair across from her. "Then sit. But Lily stays." Marian hesitated. Something shifted in the room. This wasn't just an old woman being stubborn. This was the matriarch returning to herself, commanding the house like she once did, like the woman she used to be before Caroline left and the silence swallowed everything else. Marian sat stiffly, not looking at Lily. "Why is it you're not saying?" Eleanor asked. Marian blinked. "Excuse me?" "You know who she is," Eleanor said flatly. The room went very still. "Don't you?" Eleanor pressed. Lily's breath caught. Marian swallowed hard. "I don't know what you think you found, but this house has survived long before this girl." "This girl," Eleanor interrupted, "has my daughter's eyes, my daughter's name, and the same note I wrote 23 years ago." Marian went pale. "How long?" Eleanor asked, voice quieter now, but no less sharp. "How long have you known she was out there?" Marian looked away. "I found her file 10 years ago. A nurse at the agency recognized the birth date. She called me." Lily blinked. "You knew?" Marian's voice broke. "Barely." "You don't understand. Caroline left in disgrace. She refused help, she changed her name, refused inheritance. The scandal nearly ruined us." "You didn't want to find me," Lily said, voice shaking, "because I was inconvenient." "No," Marian said, standing abruptly, "because I knew my mother would love you more than she ever loved me." Eleanor flinched. My silence followed. Then Eleanor said, gently but clearly, "You're not wrong." Marian turned, as if slapped. Tears welled in her eyes, the first Lily had ever seen on her face. "I was the one who stayed," she whispered. "I was the one who ran the businesses, paid the taxes, took care of you, and you never once looked at me like you look at her." Eleanor didn't argue. She only nodded. "You're right, Marian. You stayed, and I made you feel like a placeholder." "I wasn't enough," Marian said. "You were more than enough," Eleanor said softly. "But I didn't know how to love you without condition. I was too busy punishing Caroline through you." Lily stood frozen. It felt like she was witnessing a scene from a life she was never meant to see. A family broken and stitched and broken again, all because one woman ran and another stayed, and the last was left wondering why none of them ever came back. After Marian left the room, Eleanor didn't speak for a long while. Finally, she turned to Lily. "She hated me for loving your mother," she said, "and she hated you before she ever met you." Lily knelt beside her chair, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "I don't want to take anything from her," she said. Eleanor placed a hand over hers. "You're not taking anything. You're returning something we both lost." That night, Eleanor asked for the attic door to be left open. She said the silence upstairs made her feel less alone. Lily lit a candle and placed it on the windowsill. Downstairs, Eleanor sat in the sunroom with a blanket over her knees and her hands curled around the photograph she once kept hidden in her Bible. It was Caroline, holding baby Lily, and smiling in a way she never did at home. Eleanor whispered to the empty room, "He wasn't ready to lose you. But somehow, you found a way back to me anyway." Chapter 6. The Portrait in the Attic. The attic had always been off-limits. Old dust, old memories, old Whitmore rules. But this morning, Eleanor broke them. "I want to show you something," she told Lily as she sipped her breakfast tea with unusually steady hands. "It's time." They climbed slowly, Eleanor gripping Lily's arm, each stair creaking under the weight of years they hadn't spoken of. At the top of the stairs, the attic door groaned open. Dust motes shimmered in the sunlight, suspended like forgotten prayers. Lily stepped in first. Stacks of furniture were draped in white sheets. Trunks were pushed to corners. In the center of it all leaned a single oil painting. Face down, wrapped in old muslin and secured with rusted twine. Eleanor nodded toward it. "Go on." Lily knelt, her fingers trembling slightly as she untied the knots. The muslin fell away like silence breaking. And there, staring back at her with solemn eyes and a subtle curve of the mouth, was a young woman in a navy blue dress, standing in the garden beneath the dogwood tree. She was maybe 20. Hair dark, posture strong. And her face. Lily staggered back. "That's me," she whispered. Eleanor exhaled slowly. "That's Caroline, your mother." The painting wasn't signed, but on the back, written in faded graphite, were 3 lines. Caroline Ann Whitmore. Spring 1995. With child. Lily turned slowly to Eleanor, whose lips were tight, eyes glistening. "She had that painted right before she left," Eleanor said. "I didn't know she was pregnant at the time. She never told me. Not in words." Her voice cracked. "I painted her truth because I wouldn't listen to it." Lily stepped closer to the portrait, as if it might breathe. "She looks exactly like you," Eleanor finished. "Yeah." They sat together in the attic, the painting propped between them. The room was quiet, but heavy with everything they now couldn't unknow. Lily touched the edge of the frame gently. "Did she ever say why she left?" Eleanor shook her head. "Not directly, but I didn't need her to." She sighed. "I ran this family like it was a corporation. I didn't allow mistakes, didn't allow weakness. When Caroline got pregnant, she knew I would rather protect the family name than help her raise a child." She looked at Lily. "I was right." Lily folded her hands in her lap. She wasn't angry, not exactly. But something inside her felt suspended, like a pendulum caught in mid-swing, unsure where to land. "She didn't give me up because she didn't love me," Lily said softly. "No," Eleanor said. "She gave you up because she loved you enough not to raise you in a place that punished love." The words hung between them. An unforgiving. "True." Eleanor took a shaky breath. "I kept this painting because it was the last thing she gave me. I wrapped it up, shoved it in the attic, and tried to forget." Did it work? Normally she felt pride. Normally she felt awe. Normally she felt all of the above, not even a little. Later that day, Lily sat in the garden with a sketch pad in her lap. She didn't draw often anymore, but today her hands itched to make sense of something. She drew the dogwood first, and in the shape of the attic window. Then, slowly, she outlined the face she'd seen in the painting. Her mother's face, only now filled in with what her memory imagined. Kindness, strength, longing. She wasn't sure what it meant yet. But it helped to see it. To see her. That evening, Eleanor asked Lily to place the painting in the downstairs parlor. "No more hiding her," she said. As Lily hung the portrait above the fireplace, the butler passed through with fresh tea. He stopped short. Is that?" Eleanor looked up. "That's my daughter, and her child, the one we nearly lost." His eyes flicked to Lily, then softened. "Any more secrets then?" he said. Eleanor nodded. "Not in this house." Before Lily went to bed that night, she stood in front of the painting one more time. She didn't just see the resemblance. She saw the line, the thread of survival, of stubborn love, of women who left when they had to and returned when they could. That her mother hadn't abandoned her. That she'd left a breadcrumb trail. And Lily had followed it, all the way home. Chapter 7. The Storm That Broke the Lie. The summer storm rolled in without warning. By noon, the sky was slate. By 2, thunder cracked over Savannah like something inside the heavens had finally snapped. Inside the Whitmore estate, the lights flickered, the old chandelier above the staircase swayed gently, and the air turned thick with things left unsaid. Lily stood in the parlor, her hand resting beneath the new frame of the portrait she'd hung days ago. Caroline, her mother, stared back with quiet defiance. From somewhere deep in the house, Eleanor called out, "Marian, we need to talk." Marian entered the room moments later, umbrella still dripping, expression composed, mouth drawn tight. "I assume this is about the painting," she said. Eleanor didn't mince words. "You lied to me." Marian didn't blink. "Mother, I beg you to help me find Caroline's child," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. "And you told me she was gone, that there were no records, that there was no one left." Marian's chin lifted. "And you've been happier believing it?" "Don't you dare," Eleanor said, rising shakily to her feet with Lily at her side. "Don't you rewrite this." Lightning flashed across the windows. "You didn't just keep her from me," Eleanor whispered. "You erased her." The room went still. Rain hammered the roof above. "I did what I had to," Marian said, quieter now. "Do you remember what the board said when Caroline left pregnant and unmarried? Do you remember the donations that dried up, the sponsors who pulled out?" "I were cowards," Eleanor said. "We were power," Marian replied. "The kind you taught me to preserve no matter the cost." Eleanor's hands shook. "I taught you to protect a family, not to bury it." Marian looked at Lily then, and for the first time, something flickered in her gaze. Not anger, not even jealousy. Regret. "She was 5 when I found out who she was," Marian said softly. "Already in foster care, already bruised by—" Lily stepped forward. "Why didn't you bring me back?" Marian blinked hard. "Because I knew the moment you walked into this house, she would see her daughter's face in yours and forget everything else." The light snapped off. Darkness swallowed the house, except for the thin glow of the storm through the tall windows. Nobody moved. Then Eleanor whispered, "You were my daughter, too." Marian's voice cracked. "Not like her." "I was hard on you," Eleanor said, "but I never meant to make you feel invisible." "You didn't make me feel invisible," Marian said. "You made me need to be visible, at any cost." Lightning lit the room again. This time, Lily stepped forward. "I don't want your inheritance," she said. "I don't want your money. I came here to clean floors and feed your mother and sleep in an attic. I didn't come here to take anything." "No," Marian said softly. "But you reminded her of what she lost, and that scared me more than anything." I learned. Then Eleanor whispered, "It scared me too." She turned to Lily, her voice breaking. "Because if you weren't her child, I'd lose you twice." Lily knelt beside her. "You didn't lose me. You just didn't know where I was." The storm raged on above them, but something inside the Whitmore estate broke open. Not like glass. Like soil after rain. Nothing could grow here again. Nothing real. That night, Eleanor asked for the portrait to be moved from the parlor into the grand hall. She wanted every guest who walked through the front door to see the face of the daughter she failed, and the granddaughter who found her anyway. Marian didn't protest. Instead, she stood beside Lily as they lifted the frame together. 2 women, 2 stories, bound not by forgiveness but by truth. Later, as the rain softened to a whisper, Lily stepped out onto the back porch. Eleanor joined her minutes later, draped in a blanket, her eyes steady. He was trying to protect something, Eleanor said. I don't blame her, but I will never let it happen again. Lily nodded, staring out into the rain-soaked garden. Do you want to take the name? Eleanor asked quietly. Whitmore? Lily was quiet a long time. Then she said, no. Eleanor's brows lifted. I want to earn it first. And Eleanor, the woman who once built a life on power and silence? Not because Lily refused, but because she didn't have to. She was already family. Dame or not. Chapter 8. The woman she could have been. A storm had passed, but something lingered in the air, a heaviness, not of weather, but of the kind of truth that doesn't go back into the drawer once it's spoken. Lily stood in the family cemetery behind the estate, where the trees swayed gently above generations of names etched in stone. Whitmores, Kingsleys, Burrows. Some names she recognized from letters on Eleanor's desk, others she'd only seen in yellowed portraits on the upstairs wall. At the far end, tucked near the weeping willow, stood a modest headstone that simply read, Caroline Ann Whitmore. 7620001, which was the thunder in the quiet. There were no flowers, no candles, just moss around the edges, and wind whispering through the oak limbs overhead. Lily knelt slowly, her knees pressing into the damp grass. I don't know what you wanted for me, she whispered, but I think I'm finding it. Behind her, the soft crunch of footsteps. Eleanor came with a blanket over her shoulders and a thermos of coffee in one hand. She's buried away from the rest of the family, Lily said, not turning. Eleanor sighed. It wasn't my choice, it was Marian's, after I had my stroke. He thought you'd be angry. I was angry, Eleanor said, at myself. She settled onto the bench beside the willow. I spent so long pretending I didn't miss her, she said, because if I admitted it, I would have had to admit I pushed her away. Lily sat beside her. She left because she didn't believe she had a future here, Lily said. And maybe, neither did I. Until now. Eleanor turned, studying her profile in the morning light. You're not like her, she said gently, and you're exactly like her. Lily smiled faintly. I think that's the best thing you've ever said to me. They stayed there a while, grandmother and granddaughter saying nothing. Letting the ache settle, letting the silence become less sharp. Finally, Eleanor reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded letter. I found this in her dresser after she died. I've never opened it. Lily blinked. Why not? I was afraid, Eleanor admitted, that she forgave me, or worse, that she didn't. She held it out. You open it. Lily took the letter with trembling hands. The paper was soft from time, but the seal remained intact. She broke it gently. Inside, 2 pages. The first was addressed to Lily. If you ever find this, and God, I hope you do, I want you to know I tried. Not just to raise you, but to protect you from a legacy I didn't know how to live with. You come from women who are strong, stubborn, and terrified of softness. But you were soft and fierce from the beginning. I named you Lily because you were the first beautiful thing I'd ever done. Lily's hand went to her mouth. Eleanor looked away, tears threatening. But there was more. I left not to run from her, but to stop the cycle. But part of me always hoped that one day you'd go home. That maybe, just maybe, she'd learn to open the door. Lily folded the letter carefully, eyes brimming. She wanted this, she whispered. She wanted me to come back. Eleanor nodded, voice raw. And I didn't deserve it, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worth it. That afternoon, Lily returned to the portrait in the grand hall. She studied it now as if reading it for the first time. The softness in Caroline's gaze, the quiet strength in her shoulders. I don't want to live in your shadow, she said aloud. I want to live where your light never got the chance to reach. Later that evening, Eleanor announced at dinner, in front of the household staff, Marian, and the Whitmore Board of Trustees, that the estate would no longer be closed to the community. "We'll host monthly gatherings," she said. "Lectures, art nights, music in the garden." Marian's mouth twitched. "That was always your daughter's dream." Eleanor looked at Lily, and now it's hers. Lily stood on the steps that night, watching the wind move through the branches like breath. The woman she could have been, the one who never found her family, never claimed her name, never stood tall enough to say, "I belong here," she had faded. In her place was someone real. Present. Chosen. Chapter 9. The name she finally spoke. They gathered in the Whitmore ballroom on a Friday afternoon. Not for a gala, not for a legacy dinner, but for something simpler. And somehow, far more important. The rededication of the estate's west wing, a space that had once stored antique china and dusty furniture, now renovated into a center for women in transition. Cheryl, scholarships, soft landings. At the heart of the new wing was a library. In its center, a single shelf marked Caroline's Corner. And beside it stood Lily. She wore a simple navy dress, the same color her mother had worn in the portrait that now hung proudly in the grand hallway. Eleanor stood nearby, cane in hand, eyes gleaming beneath years of pride and regret. Marian hovered behind a tray of champagne flutes, her silence unusually kind. The crowd hushed as Eleanor stepped forward. "I was younger," she began. "I believed in two things, order and lineage. I thought if I followed rules and preserved legacy, I'd be remembered with respect." She looked at Lily. "I was wrong." A pause. "What matters is not what we pass down, but who we become when what we love is no longer guaranteed. And this," she gestured to the room, "is a tribute to the girl we lost, and the woman we nearly lost again." I turned to Lily. "Would you like to say something?" Lily stepped forward, voice steady. "I came to this house as a stranger." She paused. "I cleaned silverware I couldn't afford, washed floors I wasn't allowed to walk barefoot on. I didn't know I belonged here, not by name, not by history." She looked to Eleanor, her voice softening. "And someone saw me, not for what I lacked, but for what I reminded her of, and then, for who I really am." A hush settled. "My mother left this house because she wanted her child to grow up somewhere love didn't have conditions." She looked around the room. "Up today, I'm proud to say she was right to hope." A deep breath. "My name is Lily Whitmore. Because of what's on my birth certificate, but because I choose this family, and they choose me." The room exhaled as if it had been holding something. Eleanor reached out and took her hand. And the applause that followed was not polite. It was thunderous, alive, grateful. Afterward, Lily stood by the tall arched window, watching the late sun spill gold across the garden her mother once ran through. Marian approached slowly. "You said that well," she murmured. "Thank you," Lily said. "I want to apologize," Marian added, her voice tight, "not just for what I did, but for what I believed, that there wasn't enough room in this family for you." Lily turned to her. "Where's room?" she said gently. "But we have to make it, together." Later that night, Eleanor and Lily sat on the back porch in rocking chairs, the summer air soft around them. "You didn't have to take the name," Eleanor said. "I know," Lily replied, "but it's not just yours, it's hers." She nodded toward the stars. "And now, it's mine." Eleanor closed her eyes. "There's something I never said." Lily waited. "You saved my life," she whispered. "No," Lily said, turning toward her. "You gave me mine." Chapter 10. The Letter in the Cedar Chest. The cedar chest had sat at the foot of Eleanor's bed for nearly 40 years. It smelled of lavender sachets, mothballs, and a lifetime she had kept folded away. Inside were photo albums, pressed flowers, faded boarding passes, and hand-stitched linens that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. But beneath them all, hidden in a yellowed envelope bound with twine, was a letter no one had touched, not even Eleanor, since Caroline mailed it. "I couldn't open it," Eleanor said, standing beside Lily as she lifted the lid. "After she died, it felt like holding her breath in my hands. I was too afraid it would break me." Lily didn't speak. She simply reached in and gently untied the twine. The envelope was addressed in Caroline's looping hand. "For Mama, open when you're ready." Eleanor sat down on the edge of the bed. Her fingers trembled as Lily placed the envelope in her lap. After a long moment, Eleanor whispered, "Would you read it for me?" Lily nodded and opened the letter. "Mama, if you're reading this, it means you've forgiven me. Or at least, you're trying to. That's more than I thought I'd deserve. I laughed because I was afraid you'd love the idea of a daughter more than you'd love me, the woman I was becoming. I didn't want to raise Lily in a house where mistakes were punished more than they were understood. But I never stopped loving you. Not once." Eleanor pressed her lips together. Her eyes brimmed but didn't spill. "Were nights I sat in the kitchen and wanted to call. To tell you about her first steps, her laugh, how she always looked out for the smallest kid at daycare. She has your stubbornness, but not your temper. Thank God for that. If you ever find her, don't make her prove she belongs. Just love her the way I always hoped you'd love me. She'll surprise you, she'll soften you, and she'll make you proud. I love you, Mama. I hope you'll let that be enough. Caroline?" Lily folded the letter slowly, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Eleanor didn't speak for a long time, but then finally, "He was right." Lily looked up. "About what?" Eleanor took a shaky breath. "You made me better." That afternoon, they moved the cedar chest to the parlor and placed Caroline's letter inside a glass frame beside the portrait. Below it, a small brass plaque was affixed. Caroline Ann Whitmore. A legacy of courage and a granddaughter who made sure it wasn't forgotten. Lily sat in the attic room one last time. Her bags were packed, not to leave, but to move into the West Wing, where she would help oversee the foundation they'd built in her mother's name. She ran her fingers across the old floorboards, then opened her journal. Inside she wrote, "She never stopped loving me. And somehow, I found my way back to her by way of a woman who needed healing as much as I did." Downstairs, Eleanor was setting the table herself, refusing help, even from the butler. "I can place silverware for heaven's sake," she muttered. Lily came down and smiled. "You're stubborn." "I'm Southern," Eleanor said. "It's the same thing." They ate dinner in the garden that night, under strings of soft white lights and the distant hum of cicadas. As they cleared the plates, Eleanor asked, "Do you ever wish you'd found her sooner?" Lily looked at the stars. "No," she said quietly, "because if I had, I wouldn't have found you the way I did." She reached over and took Eleanor's hand. "I wouldn't have become the woman she always hoped I would. The life we built in silence." The Whitmore estate no longer echoed like it used to. Laughter now lived in the hallways, music filtered from the parlor on weekends. The grand staircase, once a symbol of all that stood between them, now bore the footprints of women walking toward each other, not away. In the garden, a new plaque had been placed beneath the dogwood tree, ending memory of the women who left and the ones who stayed to welcome them home. Eleanor Whitmore still walked with a cane. But sometimes, when no one was watching, she'd leave it behind for a few steps, just to remind herself that standing again wasn't just about muscles. It was about choosing not to disappear. Lily lived in the West Wing now, as staff, not even as heir, but as caretaker of stories, hers, her mother's, and now dozens more from the women who walked through their doors each. She didn't wear the name Whitmore like a crown. She wore it like a ribbon tied to a letter that had waited too long to be opened. She kept her mother's letter in her journal. She kept Eleanor's hand in hers every Sunday dinner. And sometimes, when the wind hit just right, she thought she could hear Caroline's voice between the rustle of the trees, saying, "You made it. They never made a spectacle of what they had survived. No headlines, no press releases, no dramatic announcements. But the town began to notice that the house on Whitmore Hill was no longer just a symbol of power. It was a place of refuge, of memory, of grace. Maybe you felt like Lily, out of place in the very life you were born into. Maybe you've been Eleanor, holding too tightly to what was lost to see what was left. Or perhaps you've been Caroline, running, not out of fear, but out of hope that someday, somehow, love would find its way back. This story isn't just about blood. It's about the people who walk beside you when it's raining, who remember the name you stopped speaking, who see you when all you feel is invisible. If this story stirred something in you, share it with someone who might need to remember. Love doesn't always return with answers. Sometimes it comes back with a second chance. And sometimes that's more than enough.